Today we are comparing Metro Last Light Redux on the Potato Masher and the PlayStation 4. If you don't know what the Potato Masher is, it is a custom-built computer built in December 2014 for $350 and designed to compete against the PlayStation 4 for the rest of its life cycle. If you check the video description, we have links to the original build video as well as links to an uncompressed version of this video if you really want to pixel peep. Alright, now let's talk about Metro Last Light Redux. Now, we already compared Metro 2033 Redux, and we came to the conclusion that it's not really that much better on the PC than it is on the PlayStation 4. Obviously, you can run higher resolutions, the textures are a little bit better, there are more dynamic lights, and you have slightly better options, but that's really about it. It's obviously designed to work on the PlayStation 4, and it looks great on the PlayStation 4 and the PC. You don't really lose out with either platform. But there are still slight differences. So in Metro Last Light, on the PC, there are definitely better textures and better character models. Not a ton better, but they're definitely a little bit different. And to talk more about it, I've invited Dave, the Evil Viking 13, to talk with me about it since he is a 3D and level artist with some video game experience, and he really likes good graphics. Alright, so Dave, what do you think about Metro Last Light?
This is the graphic horror opinion right here, and it is actually really hard to see differences at 1080p. Same thing as before, we have longer light render distances, and we have a few more lights per scene, but honestly, if you're just gaming at normal HD, it's really hard to tell the differences here.
Did you notice any differences in the character models or textures in the character models? Because it looked to me like the PC did have slightly better textures. I thought that was more readily apparent than in Metro 2033.
I'm looking here on my 1440p screen with the screenshots centered, and you know, it's kind of pulled back a bit. Maybe a slight difference, yeah, but like I said, just at 1080p, it's hard to tell, yeah. If you were to crank this up higher, sure, there'd be a difference, but not at this res.
Yeah, but it's still a great looking game, though. I mean, a definite step up from Metro 2033, and again, a testament to the studio for making a game that ran great on both systems. I mean, there are no real issues. Now, on the Potato Masher, you can almost run the game at 60 FPS on very high, and the PS4 is running at 1080p and 60 FPS, although we don't really know what equivalent quality settings it's using. It looks to be somewhere around medium to medium high compared to the PC version. But yeah, on the PC you can run at very high, almost 60 FPS V-Synced. It is going to dip during periods of action or if there's a lot of complex lighting going on. When it does dip, it never dips very far, usually into the mid-50s or sometimes into the 40s. There doesn't seem to be any real reason why it dips, but it's very occasional, and honestly, I'd probably play on very high just because it looks so great. Now, if you do drop it down to high, it doesn't really look considerably worse. In fact, it's very close, and you will have an absolutely locked 60 FPS all the time. But it's important that you know that the option is there. If you're someone who really cares about good frame rates and really cares about having your frame rate above 60, and if you have a build similar to the Potato Masher, then you're probably not going to be able to run the game on very high. Now, just to see what type of frame rates we could theoretically achieve, I turned off VSync and ran the game at high, since we know it's guaranteed 60 FPS locked all the time. And then without VSync, obviously you're going to notice a little bit of screen tearing, but that's just because it isn't synced. So the game, not VSynced, runs anywhere from 60 to sometimes as high as 120 FPS. Which goes to show that the game really is capable of running fantastically, but there are momentary frame rate dips, and they do happen often enough that you're definitely not going to play this game on the Potato Masher at, say, 96 Hz or 120 Hz or something like that. It's just not going to happen V-Synced. But if you're okay with some frame rate dips, as long as the frame rate is still always fantastic, then you could do it. You could play it not V-Synced, but this game does have pretty noticeable screen tearing, so personally I found it pretty distracting, and I'm totally fine playing most games at 60 FPS. I never really feel like the frame rate is hindering me at all. So I was pretty happy with it. Obviously your mileage will vary, and as always, if you're looking to play games well above 60 FPS, a budget build like the Potato Masher is probably not the thing for you. But yeah, the game is capable of running quite fast. Next, I wanted to see if you could run Metro Last Light Redux at higher resolutions than 1080p, because this is really where PC games can come into their own and something that consoles can't really compete with. Personally, I think higher resolutions have a much greater effect on image quality than many other smaller image options, although you do need a lot of extra graphics horsepower to run them. Now, what you're seeing right now is the game running at 1440p on high. It's not V-synced, which is okay because it wouldn't be anywhere close to 60 FPS anyway. It was always above 30, but at high settings at 1440p with no anti-aliasing, because the game has really crappy anti-aliasing, and once you start super sampling the resolution, you don't really need it that much anyway. But when I dropped the quality to medium, here you see now it's V-synced and it stays almost at 60 the entire time at 1440p. If you're right in the middle of a gun battle, it'll sometimes drop by only by a couple FPS, and honestly, if I didn't have the frame rate counter, I don't know that I ever would have noticed. So I'm comfortable enough to say that you can almost play this game at medium settings, 1440p at 60 FPS, although right there you'd see it did drop quite a bit. And then now, here we're looking at the game at 4K on the lowest settings. Now, there's nothing you can really do about this. If you want to run the game at 4K, you're going to run it on low. That's just how it is. But it pretty much always stayed above 30 FPS, so if you don't mind playing at 30 FPS and you have 4K and you have this build, I mean, your monitor probably costs more than the computer did, but you can theoretically play Metro Last Light Redux at 4K. I still think it looks great, it just doesn't look as good as it could with some of the other options turned up. In conclusion, Metro Last Light Redux is a fantastic looking game whether you play it on the PlayStation 4 or the PC. If you have a higher resolution monitor, I'd highly recommend picking it up on the PC, but it's great on both systems, runs great. I would just recommend not using anti-aliasing if you're on the PC because it destroys the game's performance and honestly doesn't really look any better. If you have extra headroom, I would just super sample the resolution and it will look fantastic. So thank you everyone for watching. If you have any more questions or anything about the Potato Masher, be sure to check the description for all the relevant links, and see y'all later.